Hi, everybody. I'm Jimmy DeYoung. Welcome to another prophecy moment. We're so glad you could join us. Here's the headline for the program today. This generation shall see Jesus Christ return to the earth. That's the headline. We'll get to more details on that headline in just a moment. But let me remind you about my website, prophecytoday.com. It's a full-service website. We have a prophecy bookstore with a number of materials that will help you in your study of Bible prophecy. If you have a question about Bible prophecy, you can go to my home page, look on the left-hand column, you'll see Prophecy Q&A. All the questions that we have received have been archived with my answers. By the way, if you have a question you cannot find the answer to it there on my website, send me an email at jimmy@prophecytoday.com with your question. I'll endeavor to give you an answer. We'll post it there on our website, prophecytoday.com. On the right-hand column, you'll find my daily devotional. I went through the entire Bible, looking at all 66 books of the Bible and finding the prophetic passage that is in each and every one of these books of the Bible. And I do a daily devotional looking at a passage of Scripture starting in Genesis, going all the way to Revelation. And when we spend our time in the Word, your daily quiet time, and I hope you're having a daily quiet time, each and every one of us need that in our lives so we can walk with the Lord correctly, biblically. And if you have your quiet time, you'll see I give a prophetic perspective on the passage that we would be looking at. So go to my website, prophecytoday.com. On the right-hand column, as you scroll down, you'll see the daily devotional. This is an opportunity for you to spend some time on a key website. In fact, I would suggest you bookmark my website so you'll be able to be alert. Right there on the home page, right in the center of the home page, we have every day the top 10 news stories covering current events around the world that may well be setting the stage for Bible prophecy to be fulfilled. Now let me get back to that headline I began with. Sounded like it was pretty sensational. This generation shall see Jesus Christ come back to the earth. Now let me explain that particular headline. First of all, is it talking about the generation that Jesus Christ was teaching in the Olivet Discourse, Matthew chapter 24? Well, no, because Jesus Christ did not come back. He did not set up his kingdom. That's why Jesus will return. God the Father will give him his dominion, his kingdom forever when he sees him coming in the clouds with great power and great glory back to Jerusalem. So that's yet in the future. So it's not the generation that Jesus was teaching at the time of the Olivet Discourse. Is it now? Well, I'm going to show you why it is not now. Go with me to Matthew chapter 24 and go down here to verse 24. Here's what the passage says. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. And prior to that, the 33 verses in chapter 24, actually we're dealing with the events that would lead up to that time, the generation then alive seeing the return of Jesus Christ. You remember Jesus Christ had actually gone into Jerusalem 3 times there at the beginning of Passion Week. He went in on Saturday, and that's the case because the money changers weren't there. That was the Sabbath. They don't show up on Saturday. As Jesus Christ entered that temple, went in as the potentate, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. That's what the people were shouting, waving their palm branches as he came down there on Palm Saturday. But on the first day of the work week for the Jewish people, the next day, Sunday, Jesus again came down to Jerusalem and walked up to the temple area. He came as the priest. When he walked into the temple, he saw the money changers there. What did he do? He overthrew their tables. He threw them out of the temple. He said, this is my Father's house. It's a place of prayer, not of merchandising. And then on the third day, Jesus came to Jerusalem at the beginning of Passion Week, before he would be crucified in a couple of days. On Monday, he came down as the prophet to teach. Now, let's just quickly go through this, and I'll get to that point where we started and looked at the scripture a moment ago, chapter 24 of the book of Matthew, verse 34, and I'll show you which generation shall see Jesus. Who was Jesus talking about that they would see him coming back? When you go to the beginning of chapter 24 and you spend some time in those first 3 verses, you see that Jesus, having taught on the Temple Mount, now makes his way. He's going back to spend the night there with his friends, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. And on the way, he crosses the Kidron Valley, comes up onto the peak of the Mount of Olives itself, and there's where he's going to stop and do some teaching. And in fact, his disciples, who had been following him for about 3.5 years, they wanted to hear what he said after he had made this statement in the first 3 verses that the temple they'd been bragging about, the most beautiful building in all the world at that time, the priests and the rabbis all said if you'd never seen Jerusalem, you'd never seen a beautiful building, calling attention, of course, to the holy temple, Herod's temple there. And he said there's not going to be a stone upon a stone. And boy, this got the attention of his disciples. Then starting in verses 4 through 15, you're going to see that he's teaching them. See, he was teaching them, but now he's going to tell them and teach them. They're going to be taught by the master, by the one who is going to help them understand how Bible prophecy will be fulfilled. He gives a number of signs. That's what they ask for. Can you give us some signs of your second coming? Again, this is not the rapture. It's not talking about the rapture. It's talking about the return, the second coming of Jesus Christ. So in verses 4, 5, 11, and 24, what he talks about is deception, the appearance of Antichrist, deceptions through signs, wonders, and miracles. And as you read through Revelation, you'll see that satanic beings will perform signs, wonders, and miracles. And then look at verse 6. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Verse 7. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. Well, that's that alignment of nations led by Russia, Middle Eastern Islamic nations, who put a coalition together to try to wipe out the Jewish state of Israel, that her name be forgotten forever. And that's Psalm 83 and verse 4. And so you see now you're going to have Antichrist, deception on the scene, the alignment of the nations will come about. Skip over to verse 15. There's much more that I could deal with. Oh, let me just touch one of them right here, verse 7. Pestilence. Pestilence. That's that King James word meaning pandemic, a spread of a disease. How about the coronavirus? Oh, by the way, this is leading up to the second coming of Jesus Christ, not the rapture of the church. So the rapture has not taken place at this time when he's talking about it as it is being fulfilled. The rapture has to happen before all of this will come to pass. Verse 15 says, And when you see, therefore, the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel, that means there has to be a temple on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Earlier I was talking about going to my website. I have a prophecy bookstore on my website, and there you can go and find a DVD documentary entitled Ready to Rebuild, Revisited. It gives you all the evidence that they're prepared to put that temple up. That's how close we are to the fulfillment of the book of Matthew chapter 24 and verse 15. Well, indeed, we see all of these things are going to happen. But now let's see. He's talked about the teaching that he was doing. He's telling us what he taught these disciples. Now he's going to tell them when he is coming back. Look at Matthew chapter 24 and verse 29. Immediately after the tribulation. The tribulation, that's that 7-year period of time between the rapture of the church and the return of Jesus Christ. When does Jesus Christ come back? Immediately after the tribulation. And he says, in verses 30 and 31, he will come in the clouds with great power and great glory. By the way, that's what God the Father said in Daniel chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. And when I see my Son, the Son of Man, coming in great power in the clouds, I will give him his kingdom. And that's when the kingdom comes into place. Now, let's look to see which generation is going to see Jesus Christ coming back. I told you it was not the generation there at the time when Jesus was teaching them on the Mount of Olives, the Olivet Discourse. It's not the generation today, but let's notice what it says. He says, learn the parable of a fig tree. And he's there on the Mount of Olives, a lot of fig trees as well as olive trees on the Mount of Olives. He looked out, there was a bare limb, because remember, we were coming out of the winter, going into the spring. Passover, a spring Jewish feast, is going to take place in a couple of days. So he said, look at that limb. It's been bare, but now the leaves are popping up on it. That is indication that the summer is near. And then look with me, if you will, at verse 33. So likewise, ye, when ye shall see all of these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. There's a very important bit of information. Notice it again, verse 33. So likewise, when ye shall see. It's the generation that's going to see all of the things I've already been talking about and help you to understand, according to Jesus Christ, when it is going to be that a generation will see Jesus Christ returning. Verse 34, Verily, verily, I say unto you, this generation, the ones that are seeing these things happening, this generation shall not pass away till all these things be fulfilled. That's God's word. The generation that is going to see Jesus Christ return will be the ones that see all the indications, all the signs given by Jesus in that profound prophetic conference there, the Olivet Discourse on the Mount of Olives some 2,000 years ago. Now, we may see a precursor or the preparation for all of these prophecies to be fulfilled, but they haven't been fulfilled yet. If, for example, I was talking about pestilence. This coronavirus pandemic is not the pestilence Jesus was referring to. It's going to be much worse in that 7-year tribulation period. So the generation, the people living at the time of the tribulation period that see these things happening, that generation shall not pass away till all of the prophecies Jesus gave will be fulfilled. Well, by the way, he gave another prophecy to his disciples too at the time of his teaching. Remember what it was when he was there in the upper room, John 14? Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go, I shall come again and receive you unto myself. Well, that's the rapture, friends. It's not the second coming. The second coming is when Jesus comes back with us on white horses to the Mount of Olives in the city of Jerusalem. But being caught up to meet him in the air, that's the rapture. And that has to happen before all of these prophecies are fulfilled and Jesus Christ returns to that generation that will be watching all of these signs for his second coming. What we look for is not the signs, but for that sound of the trumpet when we're caught up to meet him in the air. And that rapture actually could happen at any moment. And having made that statement, nothing left for me to say except let's keep looking up until